summed up, and I know there's a lot more to it, but in terms of user experience for creating content, there's finding, editing, and placing. So of course, finding, again, Drupal has kind of the basic administration screen, which, while it's helpful, doesn't really answer a lot of the needs of, really wanting to get the content that somebody created, finding it easily. Editing, the traditional node forms can be tricky at best. They can be 18 screens long, and I think for normal people, it's daunting. There's lots of there's lots of forms, there's lots of fields, there's lots of little help things. There's the wonderful little sort of WYSIWYG HTML drop down below the editor interface that just looks ugly. And lastly, placing content can also be quite tricky with most Drupal sites. So how do we make Drupal better? Well, I'll talk about a little bit of the tech, but I'll try to keep it to a minimum. Basically, I want to show sort of patterns and practices of things that we can do to, again, improve the usability of a Drupal site for the editing of content. And there will be a little bit of tech talk, but I'll try to keep it to a minimum. So a show of hands, there are any developer slanted people in the room? Okay, so a decent amount. And more content site builders? Okay, so it's a good mix. Yeah, I really wanted to aim the talk really at sort of best practice content workflow. And the reason I sort of can say best practices, I've worked with a lot of very large-scale projects, and I've worked with a lot of really good teams doing really good stuff. So it's not just necessarily my viewpoint, but it's sort of working across the last 6 or 7 years on quite large-scale projects, 10 users, 100 users, 5 users using the system, and millions of people viewing the site. And I'd also like to make it interactive as well. So, stop me at any time, ask me questions, say I'm wrong, say my ideas are full of crap. I'm happy to hear that. Just let me know. So stop me at any time, please. There will be time at the end for questions. But and lastly, the main thing is, demand more from the developers in the room or the developers that are working on your site, because there are some things that can be done that aren't that difficult, but do make a tremendous difference. And you don't have to hack core, you don't do anything crazy. And basically everything I'm going to show you is a contributed module. Some of them are in different states. Some of them aren't fully released yet. So first off, I'd like to focus on the findability of content. So essentially I've got 2 main items here. So there's workflow and then searching and browsing. So workflow is when a content editor rocks up and starts to want to do something, how do they do that? How do we effectively make it easy for them to, first off, find what they need to do and do it? Again, Drupal sort of has many different paths, and generally you can go to the content admin screen, or that there's no really central point of reference for a user to focus in on that. So generally, they might begin on the regular administration screen, which isn't very useful, and in that I'll be switching back and forth between lots of tabs, so sorry for that. But there's this really nice module called Workbench. That module, essentially what it does, it kind of creates a user landing page for that editor. Here's the administrator of the site. And you can see they're recently edited content over here. It shows you the type, if it's published or not, and when it was last updated. And then down here you can see just the overall content of the site. And these are all views, so they're all fully customizable. You can create essentially any sort of tabs. And it also integrates really well with the workflow, Workbench workflow, so that you can say, like, I want to see my content that is waiting to be published. I want to see my content that is in review, and so on and so forth. And there's just additional tabs at the top for that. So again, it gives a nice landing page. You just essentially go to my Workbench. You can actually make a user's landing page as soon as they log in, and it gives a nice, really concise point of reference for that user. And then there's also a nice little tab over here for creating content. So anything they're allowed to create, they can quickly then create new content. So we'll switch back to Keynote. So that's now let's get to searching and browsing. And that's the other kind of sore spot, I think. And that's the one area where you can make immediate benefits for end users. And the traditional Drupal content finding screen is pretty blah. I mean, it allows you to let me try to find. I've got the good ones. I want to show you. Oh, everyone's seen the bad one, I'm sure. I'll just skip to the good one. Here's one that's called Enterprise Base. What this does is it allows essentially a customizable entry point to content and you can essentially add any fields that you want that's pertinent to the content creators. So we've got the normal published, promoted, and sticky. But the other nice thing is author. So there's a nice autocomplete for author in there, and probably everything is me, so it is anonymous. You can also do contains, and then there's a nice little drop down for tags. So a user can say, I'm looking for all my content that is tagged as cartoon. Click on filter, and immediately you can see. And you can also see you can actually customize the actual results. So you get a nice image there, which again helps visually to see what the content is. So it's quite a vast improvement over it's subtle in some ways, but it is quite a vast improvement over the traditional way where you get to click one thing at a time to view the results, and you get, no matter what content type you have, it all looks the same, and it's hard to actually find out what that is. And this module, again, also has these really nice features so that, again, it's available through drop-downs and things, but you can say, okay, I'm just interested in articles from myself. I'm just interested in, let's see, do we have any, I don't have a whole lot of content, sorry. I'm interested in events that I've created. And so immediately you can just drill down into content that's relevant to me or anybody else and find it quite easily. The question was, what's the module name? And the answer is enterprise base. Enterprise_base, I think it was what it is. And it was created by level 10, and it's still in a beta form. But really what it is, it's a prepackaged set of views that override the traditional content screens. And the nice thing is, as well, is you can actually customize the results per content type. So for events, it might be more you'd have the event date and maybe event location or anything that's relevant to that specific content type. Because in general, users tend to, developers think of everything as a node with fields and everything's the same and everything's wonderful. But real people think of them as actually different pieces of content. There's an event, there is an article, there's a blog post, and it allows you to more easily find that content. So yeah, this is a great module. It's not released. There's not a full release yet, but I think it's quite close. Views bulk operation, it augments it. You actually need to have views bulk operations in it. You can do all this stuff if you're a developer or if you've got developers. You can actually do this quite easily. It's just a number of, like I said, prepackaged views that integrates with views bulk operations. And here's views bulk operations. You can add different ones. But yeah, it's sort of it's like a prepackaged version. So the question was, how is this different from views bulk operations? Views bulk operations, for people who aren't familiar, are a way of basically adding custom things to this drop-down menu and then being able to perform it over your content. So you might have a custom workflow that says, take all these nodes and send them to so-and-so for review and things like that. Yeah, and I was going to ask too, like, I would imagine, if I asked the question of what do you think of Drupal's built-in view sort of content administration functions, what sort of answers I would get. So I don't know if anybody wants to chime up. Yeah. 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 It's kind of, you use your site to find your content. I was working on a fairly large project actually last year with it's quite a large site, and there was a point where there was going to be a demo to the company for them to actually get introduced to Drupal. And again, this is where the developers weren't sharing a love. Basically, half hour before the on-site demo, we sort of whacked up a few quick views and things like that in using views bulk operations, a few other things, just to get rid of, because we know that everyone hates the built-in Drupal administration. We've never had a client like it, and it's not intuitive, and it basically people kind of think, well, this is it. So again, I'm very guilty of all these things, and I'm hopefully trying to get better at them. So my name is David. And yeah, here we go. Here's the built-in Drupal screen. So everything is quite painful. You can only do one thing at a time. You can't type any search features in there. You can't sort by tag, author, and things like that. So it's it's quite limited. Okay, that brings us to the second of the three things, editing. So how can we improve Drupal's editing abilities? Again, the whole node, edit, tab thing, again, it's sort of makes sense, but at the same time, I think it leads a lot to the imagination in terms of, the disconnect between, and I think with Drupal 7 and the overlay, they tried to sort of improve that a little bit, but I think they kind of didn't hit the target. I think they thought that by having an overlay and having that appear on the screen, that people would feel a little bit disconnected from what they were doing. But I think it didn't work, and we always turn it off, and people don't like it. It slows down the site. So there's a case of an overlay, sort of an idea that didn't work out well. So what are some other things that we can do? So one thing is to take the node edit screen itself, the content edit screen, I should say, and make it less cluttered and more intuitive. Here we go. Here's an example of a traditional, I'm sure everyone here has seen this, where you use title, tags, body, and basically even the most simple content type is 18 screens long, and it's just a bit ridiculous. And here's the second part of it. And they did make it a little bit shorter by putting in the tab thing, so that was kind of came around in 6 and 7. But again, it's not very intuitive. It doesn't really, kind of cut it. So one thing that's kind of coming out is Panoply, which is a distribution of Drupal. And it's sort of an entire best practice way of building a site from start to finish from the back end. So how to better find content, how to better edit content, and how to better place content. And it's not quite finished, and I think there's actually a talk later on today about Panoply, which I would recommend everyone to go to if they're interested. But it's a really brilliant system. I think Phase 2 is working on that. Sorry, let me go to my browser here. And yeah, so here you can see very traditional edit screen. You've got, it just goes on and on and on and on, and it's just quite mind-numbing and doesn't really make sense. So how can we make that better? Well, here's Panoply. Basically, we've got multi-columns. It looks a lot more like WordPress, which is quite nice. We got permalink. We can edit the title there. We don't have to repeat title. I think people know that, and I think people know that this is a body, and they don't have to have that the huge block of text below that explains over and over and over and over and over again what you're doing. So I think there should be a little I got it already button here or something like that. So it's just like, yeah, thank you for telling me that. Go away now, please. And there. What's that? Display Suite, I'll touch on that later on, actually. Display Suite is more on the visual front end of things and how to make your content shape it a little bit better. So I will cover Display Suite a little bit in the upcoming, but I don't sort of really talk about it in terms of that. Coming back to Panoply, and they've also sort of re-architected some of the other ideas. And this is Drupal 7. So they basically taken a lot of the ideas from Drupal 8 and backported them. So Drupal 8 is going to look a lot like this. And so a lot of the really cool stuff is happening in Drupal 8, which sucks because Drupal 8 is not going to be ready until it's reset until maybe later this year or when it's ready. And even then, when it's released, it's maybe not going to be stable. People aren't going to launch it, and probably maybe until mid-next year when people really start to use it. So it's not helpful. Whereas they've taken a lot of the features from Drupal 8 and backported them to Drupal 7. So this is essentially a suite of modules in a distribution. So you can actually, if you have a pre-existing site, you can actually bring a lot of the stuff into your existing site and really clean up the experience. So again, we've got things like featured image. Well, like rather than here's a traditional screen, here's my featured image. It's way down here, and there's really no. Again, it's quite disconnected from how you might think of your content. And that back on Panoply, you got it way at the top. The image is bigger. Alt text is really prominent, and all the other things are hidden, which is quite nice. And then menu options, that's an important thing. It's buried down in the traditional screen into a tab right here, and there's a little thing, provide menu link, and then look at that. It's just 1,000 options. It's just wait. What does that mean? I really don't know. And I'm a developer, so it's just really dumb. And whereas on Panoply, they've actually thought about, well, what do real people? How do real people think? How do real people want to create content? How do real people want to take that piece of content and put it into a menu structure? So you can put the title there, and then you've got the linking it into there. Publishing options that simplified a little bit. Again, it's a bit more like WordPress, which is good. You know, it's nice to learn from somebody else. And now we've got admin, date, and time, and things like that. So it's taken a lot from WordPress. It's also taken a lot from a lot of the UX, UI things from Drupal 8. And like I said, really bundled them into one really nice system. And I'm not sure when the release of the official release of Panoply will be. But again, there's a session later on today, which I'm sure you can ask the fellow or the you know, when that might be. And then lastly, so yeah, there's the save button. So yeah, that's a really nice system. And to be honest, I actually just learned about that in January. You know, like I said, I'm a developer, but there's so much things going on, and everything's kind of like Drupal 8, Drupal 8, Drupal 8. But there are some sensible people out there that, you know, are actually thinking, well, that's very far off. We've got lots of clients. We've got lots of customers right now. So, you know, let's the Drupal 8 people do what they want, and let's take what they're doing and apply it to the masses. And, you know, so they're definitely sharing the love. So, you know, if you see the people from Panoply Distribution, say thank you. Some good stuff. You can customize it. So basically, it's using panels. Panels is sort of a drag-drop kind of thing, and what they're doing is they've technically taken panels, which allows you to override anything, and they've overridden the node edit screen and just made it look pretty and made it make sense. And so definitely out of the box, like if I go back to this edit screen here, if I had, say, 40 fields in here, by default they would just keep on appearing down here and on. But it would be up to you to then maybe push some of those to the sidebar. And I can actually show you too. This is kind of jumping ahead a little bit. That's okay. You would actually get. These are some things I'll be showing soon. You would actually get to say change this layout. So your node edit screen, you can imagine you could actually choose any one of these layouts for your node edit screen. You know, whatever would make most sense for that. I mean, you could imagine there would be an image gallery where it would make sense to have the user could actually click in each one of these boxes and add an image, and they visually see what that looks like on the edit screen. You know, any one of these things can be used as that node layout, a node edit layout, as well as for the front end. So it's pretty cool. It really opens up a lot. And again, this stuff has been available for a while with pure panels. But I guess to be honest, I've always really not liked panels. I've never used it for a lot of reasons, performance and UI for two. It's really heavy. It does way too much, and the UI is awful. So you're making an awful Drupal UI even worse by putting panels in place. And so again, the nice thing what they've done with Panoply and a lot of things they're doing with something called Panelizer is they've sort of said, okay, panels is a powerful engine, but it really sucks to use it, and no one can make sense of it unless you're a developer. There's all these overrides, and it's just 800 screens to do any basic thing. And so what they've done is they said, well, why don't we just have a button that says change this layout? And so you can literally click on that button and then change your layout. Anyways, I'm jumping ahead of myself, and I need to. I'll get to that when I get to the placing the content. You can. Panoply is a Drupal 7 distribution. It's in a sort of a release candidate stage right now. And it's a suite of, there's a number of Panoply modules, and it's also bundled together a lot of existing panel modules and a few other best practice things as well. But you can, if you, I hope they'll document it, but effectively you can grab those bits that they've done and drag those into sort of piecemeal into your own site, so you can slowly improve, you know, over time, you know, what you have. I wouldn't recommend basically dropping it all in place. You might want to start with the node edit screen at first and clean that up, and then start adding the layouts. Because you're also, well, I'm jumping ahead of myself. When I get to the placement part, I'll answer that. Otherwise, I'll be all over the place. So yes, Panoply, it's a great system. The other thing is, how do we make content editing actually faster? You know, it would be really great if you could actually just literally go to a page and tap on something and start editing it. That's what Spark does. So Spark was a Drupal 7 thing, and then everyone thought that it's so cool we should make it Drupal 8 and stop the Drupal 7 part of it, which again sucks because Drupal 8 is the cool shiny toy, but it's not going to be available to most sites for at least probably a year and a half, to be honest. I mean, it might be released by the end of the year, but people launching sites on it there'll probably be some issues. Even with Dries saying that it'll probably be the most stable system, which I agree, but there's still going to be issues. So let me jump to Spark. And again, some really nice people have actually backported Spark to Drupal 7 again. So we should find out who they are and share the love with them, because it's a lot of work. So here's, again, another example of a screen, just some demo content, a big image, some body text, some tags. Normally, you would click on the edit thing, which everyone's familiar with. And again, you get that horrible screen. But Spark allows you to do inline editing. There's a little thing that says Quick Edit. Click on that, and I'm instantly switched into content, like inline editing mode. So I can just click on the title, make some changes. I'm not going to save that. And it's nice too. It actually it warns you that if you jump out of it, there, I love it. If I jump out of it, it says, hey, do you want to discard those changes or not? So it's really quite intuitive. It uses Ajax, so it's fast, done, things like that. So I click out, and I've saved that node. It's done. There's no sort of disconnect, and it's sort of what I think they were trying to do with overlay, but just didn't have the ability to. So I think this is a really, really great feature. This will be built into Drupal 8, but again, this is being backported to Drupal 7 and should be ready in the next, I'd imagine, few months. I mean, it's ready now. It depends upon how stable you want things to be. But you can sort of add it to your repertoire, your quiver of things. I'll have all the links that I'm talking about, I'll have on the web page as well. I know I'm talking about quite a few things, so I'll put those on the web page, and I'll update the slides as well.
Did you say this is core for Drupal 8?
Yeah. Spark is, the question was, is inline editing going to be core for Drupal 8? And it will be, which is great. So yeah, I mean, Drupal 8 is going to be amazing in a year and a half. Yep. Yeah, this is a Drupal 7 site. So they have started backporting it, and it's feature parity with Drupal 8. So all the nice things that are in Drupal 8, they're bringing to Drupal 7, and they're keeping, as they add new things to Drupal 8, they backport them to Drupal 7. And this is a Drupal 7 site, I want to add. So everything I'm showing is Drupal 7. There's no Drupal 8 here. So everything here is effectively, you can either use it now, some of it's stable, some of it's going to be stable. And I wanted to make sure I didn't show anything that was Drupal 8, because it's too far from now and we can't use it. And that's not showing a whole lot of love to everyone. So, good question. That's coming in the layout part of it. Sorry. Yeah, so that's the other nice thing about a lot of these tools is, now that they're doing all this work in Drupal 8, it's a lot of work to actually backport it, because Drupal 8 is quite a big change from Drupal 7. Is classes and Symfony and object-oriented stuff, and Drupal 7 is sort of spaghetti. It's nice spaghetti code in a way. It's nice, and it's way better than Drupal 6, but it's a lot of work to backport this stuff. So here's that. So also, when you're content editing, you can imagine, and Dries touched on that, mobile editing. So when the New York Transit system went down, they couldn't use their laptops and things like that, or they couldn't access in the office. They had their tablets, they had their mobile phones. They weren't using probably things like this, but how can you make your system more usable on devices, whether it's a phone or a tablet or whatever? And again, the normal Drupal menu system doesn't work well with touch. Either you have to do 800 clicks to get anywhere, or it's really tiny, or as you collapse the system down, the menu just goes all over the place. So Drupal 8 out of the box has, as Dries showed, a nice multi-touch, a touch-friendly interface that scales to PCs. That's available for Drupal 7 as well. Touch-based menu. And that's what you see up here. So it's a big finger-friendly layout, or big finger-friendly sort of thing. And Dries was saying too that you don't see these icons in the mobile version because they're too big, but now in the PC version you see the icons. And so it's you can't quite tell right now. I mean, I can definitely touch that with my finger, but that's all multi-touch friendly, and you get a nice big target there. So you can you don't have to do 800 clicks to get anywhere. It's again, you can kind of hop 3 or 4 levels deep to get to what you want, and you can add content, you can find content. So that's a really nice feature as well. So you can use that by default, or maybe just only for your mobile sites. And that one is called, I don't remember. There was too many modules. So like I said, they'll put all the names on this, because literally I was in Boston in January, and one thing that Acquia is working on right now is demos, and we're going to give those demos are going to be released back to anyone who wants to use them. because Drupal doesn't generally demo very well, and there are distributions, but a lot of times they tend to be quite one-sided or centric to certain things. And so essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to taking the best of everything and wrapping them up into one. And so there's actually a guy that was hired in January with Acquia just to build demos and distributions. And this is what I'm using right now, his make file, which is a drush thing. But effectively, every time he optimizes his build, I can just rebuild it and instantly have sort of the latest and greatest usable system here. So it's his name is Brant Wynn. So definitely, he's a good guy. He's in Chicago. So lastly, getting to the placement of content. Generally Drupal uses blocks, and it's again sort of not too intuitive. How do you sort of place content? Do you have to have your designer do things? Do you have to ask the developer to change things? And so there's again three sort of areas that I wanted to focus on. One of those is automatic placement of content. So sort of thinking about your site in terms of buckets that you want to fill, and sort of thinking about the information architecture of your site. You might, rather than having to manually place content in different slots, you might want to say, well, I want automatically anything tagged as this and sorted by date to appear here, and so on and so forth. The other one is drag and drop layouts, and I think that was one of the questions asked is, how do you change things around? I'll show you that. That's, again, Panoply. And then WYSIWYG content blocks. And what that means, again, it's sort of I don't know what that means, really. It's not a very good description for it, so it's better to show you what I mean. So again, I was touching on that. Sort of a bad pattern that's used to sort of place content is, maybe people have seen that, where you have a node, and then there's like 100 node reference fields. And so there's kind of throwaway nodes that are used for nothing else but to just add content to and then use that for a feature. That pattern is used a lot, but it really isn't very scalable, and it doesn't, again, make sense because you have a content type that does nothing but list other content by referencing other nodes, and it's a really ugly kind of lookup as you're typing. It's quite not nice, very clean lookup. So I was going to show, basically the thing that you need then is kind of think about flexible themes, collapsible layouts, and then something called context. So again, this kind of comes to the notion of how do you think of your site in terms of like this bucket that needs to be filled with different pieces of content. It does require the theme to be architected in a way that is compatible. And when I show you the panels layout system, essentially what happens is panels takes over the layout of the entire page, and your designer effectively just creates a header, a footer, and a nice kind of big white space in the middle. And panels takes over that big white space and lets you do all those layout things. So it gives a lot of power and flexibility back to the content creators and to site builders. It takes a little bit of the power away maybe from the designers, but it's kind of a good and bad thing. So back to content placing, good blocks. So blocks sort of is kind of, it's been built into Drupal since the beginning, and it's a way of placing content and adding little reusable components. But again, to use blocks, you have to go to the block administration screen, which can be quite bewildering. And you see you have every single block available, and then you have to like drag them up and move things around. So it's, again, not very intuitive, and it takes a bit of training to understand what that means. So something better is something called beans. So beans, I think, it's an acronym for something that's just really geeky. It's like blocks entities are not nodes. There you go. That doesn't really mean anything to most people, and it doesn't really mean anything to me either. Effectively, what it means is they've taken the notion of a block and they've made it fieldable. So you can almost think of a block as a reusable piece of content that you can just attach anything you want to it, and then reuse that anywhere throughout your site. So I've got a few demonstrations of that. Here's a site that I worked with NAILSMA, which is the North Australian Indigenous Land and Sea Management Agency. And this was a very, very early Drupal 7 site that sort of just kept on being built. And so it went from Drupal beta to Drupal 7.15 before it finally was released. And so I sort of learned Drupal 7 along the way, which is great. And you can sort of see here, I'll switch to the home page here. It's got a fairly traditional layout. It's got a big image. It's got it's this thing that goes to different images. It's got these things. These are blocks, for instance. So basically what that means is if I edit this, so I can show you the bad and the good part of it. So here's the bad thing. This is just a block. So you've got the block description and the body. And so, they have to scale that image to the right size. So somebody had to go into Photoshop, scale that image to the right size so that it fits into that layout. They have to make sure that this thing links to the right section. They have to add the right amount of text. So that's blocks. I mean, blocks are dumb. They're one-stop shop for anything you want to use. And I made the homepage before I found out about beans. So this is sort of the story of that. So this is a block, and here's the wonderful region. So you actually have to choose which region it's showing up on. It just goes on and on and on and on. And it's not really intuitive. And whenever they need to edit this, I just tell them, I have them email me and change it because it's so easy to they delete that or they get a huge image and it just looks terrible on the homepage. And so I was really frustrated, and I was kind of looking for what's a better way of allowing people to this is the WYSIWYG editing thing. How can you have a nice layout but make it easy for people to edit that aren't designers, that aren't web developers? So here's the bad way. Here's a block. Drupal's used it forever, but it's just dumb. So I'm going to switch to a newer section of the site that we built a few months ago, and when I had already learned about beans. There's very similar blocks, as you can see, but when I click on this, they get a little thing called edit, which is kind of nice. So I'm already not, and this would be even nicer if it was using the Panoply layout. Panoply wasn't available at the time, so you can see how you can get better and better. But now I can put in a title. I can upload a 500 megabyte image if I wanted to, or whatever, and Drupal will scale it to the right size. There's the country text. There's the editor right there. So again, it's actually node content, or it's actually a piece of content that is edited as you would think of almost any content item, and then which you use Display Suite to render that into this. So it takes those 5 or 6 fields of information and basically creates this. So it's kind of an evolution of a dumb block into something much more intelligent, and you can tune that to anything you want, and that's where the WYSIWYG part becomes. Yep. Exactly. That's an excellent point. So the point made was blocks are content, and so you can't export blocks into features or into code and things like that. So it really makes the whole workflow difficult. Whereas a bean is an entity which can be exported into code, and so the placement, the content, everything about it you can export it, and so it works much better in many larger organizations' workflows for development cycles. So that's a technical point that is another big reason that beans and a version of beans is actually being integrated into Drupal 8. So blocks are become much more intelligent in Drupal 8. They're not going to just be the kind of the dumb blocks that they are now. What's that? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So any field that like a map, you could even have a map field in there. And I mean, anything you want to do as a Drupal field, you can add to this because it's an entity, which in Drupal parlance is effectively just the ability to add any field that you want. And actually, I mean, now that you brought that up, I can actually just show you the block. Maybe I shouldn't do this. This is their live site, so I won't do this. I was going to show the fields on it, but I'm not paying attention. I might screw it up. On which one? That's actually the bean. The question was, is that a block filter? That's actually the bean interface. So you actually, like you create content types, you actually create bean types. So you're creating custom blocks that can be then reused. So you can imagine, I'll give you 1 second. You can imagine you could actually create, and again, this isn't, you could create a slideshow bean that somebody could upload 6 images and some text, or they could link to things, and effectively that could just be a reusable component of feature functionality. And the nice thing about beans is, again, it's almost like this drag and drop reusable component that you can make once and then just reuse it. I could have used the same thing on the information hub and just drag drop it and then put in unique content because it's like a node, but it's a bean, so it actually integrates with the block system, but it gets rid of a lot of the messiness of the blocks. Yeah, definitely. The question was, can you use blocks in beans? Definitely. Beans augment blocks, and they sort of take over what the block normally would do. And again, in Drupal 8, the traditional block will be sort of a relic. It'll just be beans, or bean-like things. I would say it's lessened because, to be honest, a lot of the stuff is being backported from Drupal 8. There's always a difficulty with upgrade paths, and somebody asked a question to Dries the other day. They almost attacked him with saying how hard it is to upgrade, and he said he felt bad, but he said talk to me afterwards. So yeah, I mean that's always going to be an issue, and every module you add to your site does make it maybe that little harder to upgrade. So it's something you have to think about. Say with Spark, it's kind of a no-brainer because that's from Drupal 7 or Drupal 8 and other things. So kind of the nice thing about what these people are doing is by backporting features, it also makes forward porting or upgradability a little bit easier. But yes, I mean, to be honest, every single module you add to your site does make it that much harder to potentially upgrade. Well, no, it won't be. But again, because these modules are really, really, really popular and they're being developed by some of the biggest agencies, Drupal agencies in the world, chances are they will create a Drupal 8 version or an upgrade path because they're building this stuff for their clients. And they're going to have to upgrade their client sites in a year and a half, 2 years' time. So you can always bet, you can bet a bit of money on a module that has maybe 1,000 or more users, or a couple thousand, module users. You can kind of see that on the module page. A module that's got a few hundred or less, it's probably not going to go anywhere, So yeah, I mean, everything I'm showing is sort of a free-for-all, and it's up to, I guess, everyone to determine if that fits their use case or not. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. Every module you add does increase complexity and can make it harder to upgrade. Yep. Yeah. They do. They do get a URL, but it's not. It's generally not published, if you know what I mean. So it's effectively, and you can also just kind of hide the path. So I can actually go to this. There actually is a URL for this piece of content, which is kind of weird. So you can actually go to a page that just lists this content, but of course it's kind of all over the place because it's not properly aligned. But you can just hide that path, and then that way you don't get, like in a normal system where you are overriding what a content item is, and as you said, you have to exclude that from the search engines or your search results, because otherwise people will always land on these result pages and never actually go to the actual result that they wanted to see. And so like in Solr or in MySQL or whatever your search engine is, you have to like exclude these dummy content types and things like that, and then it's always tricky, whereas beans do, you can create a nice little WYSIWYG interface that says, okay, I want to make a slideshow, so let's create a slideshow bean and have a multi-field for all the 1 or 10 images, and then you just put a little JavaScript around that. Or there's actually a slideshow module, a bean. There's about 15 beans that you can download, and there's 2 slideshow ones. And so out of the box, you get a slideshow, and then you just drop that block on a page, a bean, and you add 1 or more images, and it's got the JavaScript and jQuery and stuff, and it just creates effectively what, again, it wasn't available when I started the site. I would have been able to get this exact feature here, and then your CSS person can style it out of the box. And instead, I had to like find a jQuery thing, and this is using views, and so that's the other. This is the bad pattern too. Like when somebody wants to change this, what they actually have to do is they have to go to each separate piece of content and tag it to something. So you're saying, okay, well, and then you have to detag something. And so, like again, it's kind of a thought. That's not very thoughtful of me to have done that. So like that person now has to go through their site, find the piece of content that they want to show up here, tag it, but then also remember which one they don't want to be on there anymore and untag it. And they have to do that. And then the view, it just picks up everything that's been tagged to X. If this was a bean, rather than having to make them do that, they could click on this, go to edit, and then just have a nice autocomplete thing that they could just type in, I want these things to show up. And I have another example, too, of a bean, which is a little bit more simple here. So here's that demo site. This is all Drupal 7. Here's a recent articles block, bean, and it's quite basic. I'm just showing title, image, square image, and some tags, and so there's three of them there. That's a bean. So I can click on Edit. And here what they've done is they've actually created a little interface to this bean. So rather than be the normal fields, I can just say, okay, well, here's the title for it. Here's the view mode that I want. Here's how I want this thing to actually display. So here I've chosen teaser with image, and I've used display suite to create a few new view modes, which I'll show shortly. And I want to show, I'll just say 2 items. I click save. And so it's basically views ultra simple. And see there now I've just edited that recent articles, 2 things, and there you go. So it's a really easy system, and you can customize that to be as complex or easy as you want with drop-down lists and all sorts of things. So I can click on, again, you can see how easy it is for somebody to say, okay, well, I don't really like that layout. Let me say, okay, I want to show 3 things, and I'm going to use a grid. So this is another view that I've created. I'll click save. And there you see it's a nice big image, the title at the top, so it's a bit more visual. It's like, okay, well, that's a bit big. I don't like that. I'll just be the last example here. Click forever. Teaser. That's just the Drupal teaser. Everyone, it's just the normal Drupal teaser. Click on that, and there's just the teaser just in the side column. So you can quickly see how easy it is for content layout people to have more control and flexibility over what they're doing without forcing them to use views or to sort of jump around through the site and grab pieces of content. You've wrapped up exact functionality that you want that content editor to use or that layout person to use, given them just a few options, which is really nice, and then create it as a bean. And probably would make sense. You can drag and drop that around. So that's Bean. It's a really nice module, and it does a lot for layout. And again, they're bringing that into the fold of Drupal 7. So it's kind of what I meant about WYSIWYG, is that it kind of sums up what you're doing, and you can save it, and you can instantly see what you want to do. So it's dynamic content regions that are what you see is what you get. And in case I didn't have internet connectivity, I had some things here, but I had internet connectivity, so I'll skip over that. And I'll go to layout now. So the other really nice, I think I'm okay on time. I'll try to wrap it up if there's any questions. The other really nice thing about what they're doing with panels, because panels I always felt was just rubbish. Like no one used it, like except a few people. I don't mean to offend anybody if they use it. I didn't use it, and a lot of the developers I talked to didn't use it. And it just shocked me when I was in Boston in January that every distribution is using panels. It just, you sort of like, you're learning that Santa isn't real or something like that. Like panels is being used. It's like, oh, that's weird, But there's a reason, because what they've done is they've gotten rid of what was sort of evil about panels, and they've used what's good about panels. And so we've got these nice big buttons here. Like I won't even show you what panels used to look like. It was really horrible. I'm sure some people have seen it. Like it's this 800 menu screen with 800 tabs, and there's node overrides with print signs, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good. I didn't like it. So what they've done is they said, well, what do people want to do with panels? They want to be able to customize a page, and they want to be able to change the layout. So here's my home page. It's really basic, really ugly, but it's just a demo site. So if I click on Customize this page, you get this inline visual drag and drop interface. So straight away, I can scroll. Here's all my content. And the great thing is you still see your content, but it's just in the context of the placement. So here's the content. There's the sidebar. And you can just, sorry, these are really long, but I can just grab this and drag it up to the top. And that just gives you a nice drop slot. I can be even crazy and take that and put it over there, and put this one over here. So, anyways, and you can delete stuff. So it gives you total flexibility of the layout of your page, and you can add new blocks, beans, nodes, content, views, all sorts of stuff. So the views used to kind of look like this, but with more ugly stuff. And so they've tried to simplify it. And again, I think you can filter this down so that you can say, okay, I only want people to access, maybe like I want them to be able to easily reference another node, for instance. I want them to drop in a bean. So you can add some custom. You can add and they've done some of these nice things. Like I want to add a quick image to the page. I want to add a map, I want to add a table, and things like that. So I could click on add a map, and you can put in an address and so on. And so it's kind of like like Bean, but they've augmented into panels so that you get a lot of interaction with your page. I'll just cancel that. And this is again part of the Panoply distribution, and it's not 100% stable, as you can see. It keeps reloading, and they can't get out of here. So switch to another demo. Here again, customize this page. I won't click on map this time. Drag and drop. So there's a map already loaded there. So I can drag and drop any of this content. So again, it makes it really easy. You don't have to go to the block screen, and I think there's a block screen in here. Well, I'm sure everyone's seen what a normal block screen is. It's not this intuitive for sure. Sorry, this thing's going crazy now. I shouldn't have clicked on map. I knew I hadn't clicked on map ever before. I thought, oh, I'm going to click on map because it'd be cool, but it's not cool. It screwed me up. There we go. Good. So yeah, and then again, I can change layout. This is a live site, so I'm not going to change layout here. Change list layout, and I can just show you. I haven't done this either yet, so it'll probably screw up. But I'll just go to that, and then it says, how do you want to map? You can actually take your existing content and map it, and so it shows where you're going, where you're and where you're going to, and what the preview is going to be. So it's really nice. It's really good, and you get total flexibility of your layout, and you get a little bit of that power from your designers, and you get it back to the content and layout people. So you can have really ugly looking sites or really good looking sites. So I guess the power is in your hands, and I think I'm at nearly at time. So is it 60 minutes or 50? Okay, well then I'm all right. Okay. So yeah, in review, Drupal can do better. Out of the box, Drupal isn't very usable, but it's got a lot of power under the hood. These modules, you kind of have to just know what modules are out there. Like I said, I just learned about a lot of the stuff in January, and it's cool because I always thought it was just Drupal 8, and I'm a developer, so I didn't have any excuse. And there's not much code either. A lot of these things are drop-in modules, so they're not all stable yet, and I'm happy to put in on the module list which ones are stable and which ones are not. And you get really great results. So you can really kind of revolutionize, in a way, the usability of your site for your content creators, which with sort of in between 1 and 30 modules. So, the user experience for content creators, we've got finding, editing, and placing, and those sort of things all together, I think, really do increase the usability of a Drupal site and sort of move it into another level. I mean, I think it becomes way better than WordPress. It becomes way better than many other really commercial systems, and almost everything that I showed is available. Well, is all available today, but stable, maybe not. I had to put this slide in. Somebody saw me typing it as I was getting ready. Acquia is hiring here in Australia, and get in touch with me or some of the other Acquia people. And yeah, it's a good company. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah. The question was, beans are great, but they're not revisionable. Like a node is revisionable, and if you've got a site that's got a really complex workflow or just more comprehensive workflow, how do you then not have a revision of something? I haven't faced that, but they are working on making beans revisionable. So, sorry.
The demo sites you're talking about, are they publicly available? And if so, is it through Drupal Gardens or through downloadable stacks?
No, they're not yet. Panoply is. That's just a distribution. You can just go to drupal.org/project/Panoply, and you can get almost everything I showed right out of the box with that. The other one that Acquia is working on is internal, but we'll probably push that out. It's just a make file, and it's just sort of pre-configured site with a few things here and there. And I'll ask if we can get that. It's just on our GitHub account, but it's locked away. But it'd be great if we could just push that to a drupal.org project. Yeah, the question was, you use context for layout. Can you use beans? Definitely. The site that I'm showing here is entirely built with context. So I didn't actually get to this one, but basically everything here is laid out with context. And again, that's really nice about beans. Beans are exportable as well, so you can export your context. Is a way of like having your layout all in code, and also it's that idea of having more intelligent layout, so that it basically says, I'm a bucket, fill me up with the stuff that you want. And so, yeah, I mean, definitely beans integrate perfectly, because it's basically, blocks are the wrapper, and beans just fit inside of it. So it kind of piggybacks off of the block. So anywhere where you can use a block, you can use a bean. Question? Yeah. The question was, I didn't touch on help as for a reason, because I didn't have time and I didn't think of it. And what would I recommend to put in place for some sort of readily available help for people that aren't familiar with Drupal? And again, it's something we struggle with the large-scale projects. And part of the help that we're trying to do is making the system more usable, first off. So it looks kind of like WordPress. It looks like Facebook or something they're familiar with. So that goes a long way, because Drupal out of the box doesn't make sense. So that's only a little bit of the way. There are quite a few videos and things like that you can access, but a lot of them are having to pay. But there is the help module that you can install, but then it's just a bunch of text. So I don't think there really is a clean way of saying, like, here's a really nice context-sensitive help system that will kind of follow you along the way. Sorry. It's a good idea. Yeah. Like he said, that sounds good. I like that. Yeah.
Can I just plug something on that? We're trying to get into the place where we can help with the tour module, which is basically it takes you on a tour page by click tour mode. You click on the part of the page, you get a pop-up that gives you a description.
That's cool. Pam was saying that they're working on a tour module that gives somebody a visual tour of each piece and actually walks them through the editing components of a system. And I'm sure you can edit those.
It's not available. We're trying to get it easily to replace the actual regular tour help module, but we need help.
Is that a release? Is it on d.o? Drupal.org? Okay.
No, we've done it first.
Okay. I was going to pull up something, but I'm not. So, tour module. Talk to Previous Next. They're doing some good stuff. Any other questions? Yep. Yeah. Yep. The question I'll try to summarize is this gentleman he uses files that are attached to nodes, and those files are multiple authors, and they might be referenced on multiple nodes. And so how do they track if a file is updated, how do they track that through the different areas? And he currently actually has a node as a placeholder that's referenced into the. I would say, do you use Drupal 6 or 7? Okay. For Drupal 7, there's something called Media Module, which actually takes a file and makes it fieldable. So again, almost like I'm talking about with beans, basically it's taking a file and turns it into a fieldable object that you can treat as an entity. And so rather than having to reference a node which references a file, you actually reference the file. And you can have you can revision that, you can add authors to it, tags to it. It's anything you want to do with it. It becomes a reusable object. So if you're using Drupal 7, I'd recommend to look at the media module and the file entity. But Drupal 6, I think you're doing the best thing with the node reference pattern. That's a good question. I'm glad you asked that. There's some really cool stuff. This is just locked up, and I'm just not going too well here. Yeah, that map just did me in here. It's just horrible. There we go. I have trust on trusty. There we go. Good old Chrome. Let me try. I think I have enough time to restart Firefox. I've got 2 minutes, a minute and 10 seconds, 9 seconds. This is a fast Mac, so it's got an SSD, so it should be really fast. We'll test it. But of course, I have 150 tabs open in Firefox, so. But yeah, I actually wanted to show that. There we go. The nice thing about Firefox, the new version of Firefox, though, it only loads the tab that you're on. So see, look at that. That's great. It only loads the tab you're on, so that's really cool. So that's why you can have 200 tabs and not really screw things up. So let me jump to. Here we go. How does it affect responsive design? There's this really cool thing up here which actually does that. You can click on this and get a preview of what it looks like in mobile, what it looks like on tablet, and what it looks like on your normal screen. So, no, this isn't Panoply. This is our thing, but I think this is part of Panoply as well. So this is Bartik responsive and with theme. So you can see here's the tab-friendly buttons. So yeah, this is really cool. It gets that instant preview. I mean, that's the lazy version of just taking the browser and doing this. But it's a lot cooler to click a button, isn't it? So I mean, it's the same thing, but it's cooler to just like. That's Bartik behind the scenes, and they've just made it responsive. So panels and stuff, and it all works with responsive, and it's really cool. So you can see, you can preview every panel layout, in Panoply is responsive. So it's all built into how it's going to collapse for you. So that's a great thing. You can actually make a change to a page and see exactly what's going to happen to your wonderful layout. And let me try to jump to. Yeah, here's the Panoply distribution. Actually, Panoply doesn't have that built in, so I'll find out what that thing is. And is it to Spark? There we go. Spark is cool. Yep. What's that? Navbar. Thank you. I had like 800 modules, so I just couldn't keep track. I have my notes on the thing, but yeah, I think I'm over here. So any last quick question? Yeah. It's like I said, there's a lot of really cool stuff. It's all Drupal 7. None of this is Drupal 8. And most of it is probably going to be ready in the next month or two, I'd imagine, or it's quite stable. I mean, don't add a map to your page because you'll crash your browser. So anyways, thank you for coming.